My wife thought she had pulled off the ultimate power move. She gathered all her high society friends in our living room, handed me a folder of new rules for our marriage, and waited for them to laugh at me. She expected me to beg. She expected me to fold. But she didn't know that I had a folder of my own waiting under the table. And let me tell you, when I opened mine, nobody was laughing anymore. Welcome back to Inspiration Seeker. If you enjoy stories about instant karma, sweet revenge, and standing up for your own dignity, please hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and comment. I know my worth down below to support the channel. Now, let's get into the story. It all started on a Sunday morning that was supposed to be perfect. The California sun was hitting the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Beverly Hills home just right, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I had spent the last 2 hours ensuring everything was immaculate for Tiffany's power brunch. I wasn't just a husband, apparently. Today, I was also the event planner, the janitor, and the waiter. I own a boutique architecture firm. I design skylines. But in my own home, I felt increasingly like a ghostly figure who just happened to pay the mortgage. Tiffany came down the stairs looking like $1 million, literally, considering the jewelry and designer dress I'd paid for. She didn't say good morning or thank you. She just scanned the room, looking for flaws. Jason, the napkins are folded wrong. I wanted the swans, not the pyramids. Fix it before the girls get here. She snapped, not even making eye contact. She was already typing furiously on her phone, probably coordinating her entrance with her clique. I sighed, refolding the linen napkins without a word. I told myself I was doing this to keep the peace. I told myself she was just stressed. But deep down, the resentment was building like pressure behind a dam. By 11 a.m., the house was full of perfume and high-pitched laughter. Her friends, a group of women who treated marriage like a business transaction and their husbands like ATMs, were lounging on the white sofas, sipping mimosas. I tried to join the conversation, standing near the edge of the circle, holding a pitcher of orange juice just in case someone needed a top-up. "Oh, don't mind Jason," Tiffany said loudly, waving a hand at me dismissively as if shooing away a fly. "He's just here to make sure our glasses stay full. Isn't that right, honey?" The room erupted in giggles. I forced a smile, my grip tightening on the glass handle of the pitcher. "Anything for you, Tiff," I said, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. "See? Trained him well," she winked at a woman named Courtney. "Honestly, having a husband is so much work. It's like raising a child. You have to set boundaries, or they walk all over you." I felt my face heat up. I was 40 years old. I ran a successful company. I managed 30 employees. Yet here, in the sanctuary I built, I was being discussed as if I were a disobedient golden retriever. I retreated to the kitchen to refill the ice bucket, my heart pounding against my ribs. I looked at my reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator. How did I get here? I wondered, when did I become this guy? I didn't know it yet, but the humiliation was just the warm-up act. Tiffany had something planned for the main event, something she thought would cement her dominance over me forever. She had no idea that while she was playing checkers, I was about to flip the entire board. Re-entering the living room felt less like returning to a party, and more like walking into a trap. The energy had shifted. The casual chatter had died down, replaced by a buzzing, electric anticipation. It was the kind of atmosphere you feel in a school cafeteria right before a fight breaks out. Tiffany was standing in the center of the Persian rug, commanding the room like a CEO addressing shareholders. In her manicured hand, she clutched a sleek, black leather folder. It wasn't a magazine or a gift. It looked official, too official for a Sunday brunch. It looked like a prop for a performance I didn't know I was starring in. "Excuse me, everyone. Can I have your attention for a moment?" Tiffany announced, her voice pitched slightly higher than usual, her public voice. She tapped her spoon against her champagne flute, the sharp ting-ting-ting cutting through the remaining silence. I stopped near the archway, holding the tray of refills. My stomach churned. I watched as her friends shifted in their seats. They didn't look surprised. In fact, Courtney and a few others were already pulling out their iPhones, hitting record, and aiming the cameras directly at me. That was the first red flag. They knew this was coming. This wasn't a spontaneous announcement. It was a scheduled event. So, Tiffany began, flashing a dazzling smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You all know how much I value growth. Personal growth, spiritual growth, and marital growth. She paused for effect, looking directly at me. Jason and I have been hitting a bit of a plateau lately. And I realize that for us to move forward, for us to truly be a power couple, we need to professionalize our relationship. A few of the women covered their mouths to hide their snickers. I froze. Professionalize our relationship? What did that even mean? I've drafted a plan, she continued, tapping the leather folder with a long, acrylic nail. Think of this as a restructuring, a way to ensure that certain needs are met and standards are maintained. Because, let's be honest, ladies, we shouldn't settle for mediocrity just because we said, I do, right? Preach it, Tiff, someone shouted from the back. I set the tray down on a side table slowly, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from a dawning, icy realization. I wasn't a partner in this marriage anymore. I was an employee being called into HR for a disciplinary meeting, and the entire office was invited to watch. She motioned for me to come closer, beckoning with her finger. Come here, honey, she said, her tone dripping with faux sweetness. It's time we got on the same page. I walked toward her, every step feeling heavy. I knew something terrible was inside that folder, but I kept my face blank. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me sweat. Not yet. Tiffany cleared her throat, a theatrical sound that signaled the beginning of the show. She flipped the leather folder open with a sharp snap. Inside, the document wasn't some handwritten love letter or a list of goals. It was a typed, formatted contract. She had actually spent time typing this out. Rule number 1, she announced, projecting her voice so even the camera phones in the back could pick up the audio clearly. Financial alignment. Effective immediately. Your direct deposit will be rerouted to the primary household account, my account. You will receive a weekly allowance for gas and lunch. Any expense over $50 requires pre-approval via text. A ripple of laughter tore through the room. An allowance, one of her friends shrieked. That's right, Tiff. Keep him on a leash. I felt my jaw tighten. I earned the money. I built the business from the ground up while she spent her days shopping and planning parties. And now, I was being demoted to a teenager asking for pocket money. She ignored the interruption and continued, seemingly emboldened by the applause. Rule number 2, time management. Curfew is strictly 8 p.m. No more late nights at the office. If you aren't through that door by 8 to assist with household needs, there will be financial penalties deducted from your allowance. Household needs, in Tiffany's vocabulary, meant rubbing her feet while she watched reality TV or cleaning up the mess she made while trying on outfits. Rule number 3, she said, looking over the top of the folder with a smirk. Social calibration. No more of those boring architecture mixers or weekends working on your projects in the garage. Your free time is now us time. However, she paused with dramatic effect, flipping a page. Clause 4 states that I retain the right to personal wellness trips, solo vacations, up to 4 times a year. No questions asked. A queen needs her space, after all. The room erupted. They were clapping now. It was a spectacle of humiliation. To them, this was hilarious. A modern woman taming a wild animal. To me, it was a declaration of war. She was effectively stripping me of my autonomy, my resources, and my dignity in one fell swoop. She looked up from the paper, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She didn't see a husband standing in front of her. She saw a servant she had finally broken. She thought the silence coming from me was submission. She thought the lack of movement was fear. But as she read that final clause about her solo vacations, something inside me snapped. The love I had been holding on to, the excuses I had made for her behavior for years, it all evaporated instantly. I wasn't looking at my wife anymore. I was looking at an adversary. And you don't negotiate with terrorists. You neutralize them. Tiffany closed the folder with a snap that sounded like a gunshot in the suddenly quiet room. She didn't hand it to me politely. She didn't offer it like a partner proposing a compromise. Instead, she tossed it. The leather cover slapped against my chest, and I had to fumble to catch it before it hit the floor. It was a calculated move, designed to make me look clumsy, weak, and desperate. "Sign these rules now, Jason, or we're done," she stated, crossing her arms over her chest. Her chin was tilted up, defiance radiating off her in waves. I need a man who understands his place, not a child I have to constantly correct. If you can't agree to these terms, you can pack a bag and leave my house tonight. My house. The audacity was breathtaking. I paid the mortgage, the property taxes, and the insurance. But in her mind, my existence here was merely a tenancy she could revoke at will. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. The giggling stopped. The iPhones were held steady. This was the climax they had all been waiting for. The moment the dog rolls over and shows its belly. They expected me to plead. They expected me to stutter, to ask for a compromise, or to look at the floor in shame. They wanted the breakdown. From the corner of my eye, I spotted movement near the patio doors. It was Brad, Tiffany's personal trainer. He wasn't supposed to be here. This was a girls' brunch. Yet here he was, leaning casually against the doorframe, sipping a protein shake. He caught my eye and offered a slow, arrogant smirk. It was a look that said, "I've already won." He knew about the rules. Hell, he probably helped her write them during their private sessions in our home gym. The betrayal wasn't just in the contract. It was standing right there in a tight t-shirt, mocking me in my own living room. I looked down at the folder in my hands, then back up at Tiffany. She looked so sure of herself, so invincible in her little bubble of delusion. She thought she had cornered me. She thought this ultimatum was the wall I would crash against. She had no idea that she had just given me the perfect opening to burn the whole thing down. In moments of extreme betrayal, most people expect a fiery explosion. They expect shouting matches, broken vases, or tears. Tiffany and her chorus of onlookers were bracing for the drama. They were thirsty for it. But as I held that ridiculous contract in my hands, a strange sensation washed over me. It wasn't rage. It was absolute crystalline clarity. It was a feeling of a heavy burden suddenly being lifted off your shoulders because you realize you no longer have to carry it. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the folder back in her face. Instead, I slowly reached into the inside pocket of my blazer and retrieved my fountain pen, a heavy black Mont Blanc she had given me for our 5th anniversary. Ironically enough, a collective exhale swept through the room. I saw Courtney nudge the woman next to her. The tension in Tiffany's shoulders dropped instantly. She offered a smug, victorious smile to Brad across the room. "He's folding," their eyes said. "He's actually going to do it." They thought they were watching a man surrender his dignity in real time. I opened the folder to the signature page. I smoothed the paper down on the back of the leather casing. I hovered the nib of the pen over the dotted line, letting the silence stretch out until it was almost uncomfortable. I wanted them to remember this moment. I wanted them to savor their victory, so the taste of ash would be that much more bitter in a moment. Then, with deliberate, agonizing slowness, I screwed the cap back onto the pen. Click. I looked up, locking eyes with Tiffany. Her smile faltered, just a fraction. "You know, you're absolutely right, Tiff," I said, my voice conversational, as if we were discussing what to order for dinner. "We can't continue like this. A marriage requires structure. It requires rules. And honestly, I think it's time we put everything on the table." I closed her folder gently and placed it on the coffee table. "But a contract works two ways." I continued, unzipping my leather briefcase that I had quietly placed by my feet when I first walked in. "And since we're in the spirit of signing things today, I think it's only fair you take a look at what I brought for you." The sound of the zipper on my briefcase seemed to echo in a room like a chainsaw revving up in a library. I didn't rush. I reached in and pulled out a thick, heavy manila envelope. This wasn't a sleek, leather-bound prop meant for performance. This was utilitarian, dense, and packed with a weight of consequence. It landed on the marble coffee table with a solid thud that vibrated the stems of the crystal champagne flutes nearby. I placed it right next to her ridiculous folder demands. The visual contrast was striking. Her folder was thin, superficial, and flashy. Mine was ugly, substantial, and real. The room shifted from mockery to confusion. I could see the gears turning in Tiffany's head. For a split second, her narcissism took the wheel again. Her eyes lit up slightly. She probably thought I was handing over the deed to the vacation home she'd been nagging me about, or maybe stock certificates, a piece offering to buy my way back into her good graces. "What is this?" she asked, her voice wavering just a little. She reached for her mimosa, taking a nervous sip. "A apology gift? Because of its jewelry, Jason, you know I only wear platinum now." Her friends leaned in, phone still recording, hoping for an unboxing video of a diamond necklace or keys to a new car. They were so conditioned to see me as a provider, the wallet, the pushover, that they couldn't conceive of a reality where I bit back. I stood up straight, buttoning my blazer. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I looked at her with the cold detachment of a stranger. "It's an opportunity, Tiffany," I said, my voice steady and low. "You wanted new rules. You wanted a different life. You wanted freedom from a husband who holds you back." I pointed a finger at the manila envelope. "That right? There's your golden ticket. Sign that, and you don't have to worry about my allowance or my curfew ever again. Open it," I commanded softly. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with static. Brad, still leaning by the door, stopped smirking. He set his protein shake down. He sensed it before she did. The predator's instinct realizing the prey had just grown fangs. Tiffany set her glass down, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the metal clasp of the envelope. She had no idea she was about to pull the pin on a grenade. Tiffany didn't carefully slide the contents out. She ripped the envelope open with the impatience of a greedy child tearing into a birthday present. She was expecting a check, a deed, or maybe flight tickets to Paris. She yanked the thick stack of papers out, her eyes scanning the top page hungrily. But instead of a bank logo or a travel itinerary, she was staring at the bold, capital letters of a legal filing. "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The color drained from her face. So fast, it looked like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. It was a silent gasp, the kind you make when the wind gets knocked out of you. She blinked once, twice, as if trying to make the words rearrange themselves into something she wanted to see. "Divorce," she whispered, her voice trembling. You can't be serious." "Keep looking, Tiffany," I said, my voice cutting to the room like a razor. "The exhibits are attached." Her hand shook violently now. As she turned the page, a series of glossy, high-resolution photographs slid out from the stack and scattered onto the coffee table like a losing hand of poker. They landed face up for everyone to see. The gasps from her friends were audible. These weren't blurry, grainy shots taken from a distance. These were crystal-clear 8x10s. Exhibit A. Tiffany and Brad passionately kissing in the valet lane of the Four Seasons. Exhibit B. Tiffany and Brad checking into the presidential suite. Exhibit C. A close-up of the hotel folio, paid for with the corporate American Express card that was strictly for my business expenses. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. The women who had been giggling moments ago were now staring at the photos with wide, horrified eyes. The camera phones that were recording my humiliation were now capturing undeniable proof of her infidelity. Tiffany looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror. The mask of the power wife had shattered completely. She wasn't the queen of the castle anymore. She was a liar caught red-handed. She looked at the photos, then at me, then frantically scanned the room for Brad. "Jason, wait," she stammered, holding up a hand as if she could physically stop the reality crashing down on her. "I can explain. It's not what it looks like. These are edited. Yes, they're fake. AI generated. They are time-stamped, geotagged, and corroborated by the hotel security footage, which my private investigator subpoenaed." I replied, crossing my arms. "And looking at the expression on Brad's face right now, I don't think it could back up your AI theory." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. The excuse of AI-generated images hung in the air, pathetic and dying. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to flip a table. The truth had done all the heavy lifting for me. I took a step forward, and for the first time in years, the crowd parted for me. I pointed a finger at the document trembling in Tiffany's hands. Turn to page 4, Tiffany. Clause 7, paragraph B. I instructed, my voice calm but carrying the weight of a judge's gavel. You remember our prenuptial agreement? The one your father insisted on to protect his princess? Well, it had a very specific infidelity clause. It states that verifiable proof of adultery renders all claims to spousal support, alimony, and asset division null and void. I let that sink in. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the untouched mimosas. That means, I continued, you don't get half the company. You don't get the house. You don't even get the car. You leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it. Your wardrobe and your ego. The transformation in the room was instantaneous. The friends who had been cackling at my expense 5 minutes ago were suddenly fascinated by the patterns on the rug. The smartphones were lowered, screens turned off, slid hastily into designer handbags. They realized the narrative had flipped. This wasn't a funny story about a whipped husband anymore. This was a public execution of their friend's financial future, and they were terrified of getting hit by the shrapnel. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Brad, the tough guy personal trainer, was attempting a tactical retreat. He was inching toward the French doors, trying to make himself invisible, probably realizing his meal ticket had just been canceled. I wouldn't leave just yet, Brad. I called out without turning my head. He froze, his hand halfway to the door handle. You're named in a lawsuit, too, I said, turning to face him. Alienation of affection is one thing, but Grand Theft Auto is another. Those weekends you two spent in Santa Barbara? You took my vintage 911 Porsche out of the garage. You put 400 miles on it and scratched the rear rim. I have the toll road logs and the neighbor's Ring camera footage of you driving it. Brad looked at Tiffany, then back at me, his face pale. Man, I didn't know, he stammered. Sit down, I ordered. And to everyone's shock, including mine, he did. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted. It had completely inverted. I own this room now. When a narcissist realizes they've lost control, they don't apologize. They don't reflect. They detonate. Tiffany stared at the photos, then at Brad cowering on the sofa, and finally at me, her face contorted, twisting from shock into ugly, desperate rage. The tears started flowing, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration. You set me up, she shrieked, her voice cracking. She slammed her hand on the table, knocking over a vase of white roses. Water pooled onto the divorce papers. You planned this. You let me throw this party. You let me invite my friends just to humiliate me? You're a monster, Jason. You're abusive. It was a masterclass in gaslighting, in her twisted reality. I was the villain for catching her, and she was the victim because her infidelity had been exposed inconveniently. A year ago, that accusation would have made me apologize. It would have made me scramble to fix things. Today, I just watched her unravel with the detached curiosity of scientists observing a lab rat. I didn't set you up, Tiffany, I said calmly. I just stopped covering for you. I walked over to the entryway console table. There was a ceramic bowl where we kept the keys. I reached in and fished out the fob to the Aston Martin DB11, her dream car that I had leased under my company's name for her birthday last month. Hey, where are you going? She screamed, realizing I was physically withdrawing from the battlefield. We aren't done. You can't just leave me here with this. She gestured wildly at the mess of photos and legal documents. I turned at the door, the heavy oak frame feeling like a portal to a new life. I looked at her, then at her silent, uncomfortable friends, and finally at Brad, who was staring at his shoes. Actually, we are done, I said. And one last thing. I've already spoken to the real estate agent. This house hits the MLS listings tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. That gives you exactly 24 hours to pack your things and find somewhere else to sleep. I suggest you ask Brad if his couch is comfortable. You can't kick me out. This is my house, she wailed, rushing toward me, grabbing at my sleeve. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. Read the deed, Tiff. It was bought before the marriage. It's my house. You were just a guest who overstayed her welcome. I opened the door and stepped out into the warm California afternoon. Behind me, I heard the sound of Tiffany collapsing onto the floor in hysterics. I didn't look back. I walked to the car, the engine roaring to life with a satisfying growl, and drove away. For the first time in 10 years, I was homeless, but I had never felt more at home in my own skin. I spent that first night in a corporate housing suite downtown. It was sterile, smelling of lemon polish and recycled air, a stark contrast to the curated chaos of the mansion I had left behind. I thought the hard part was over. I thought leaving was the climax. But I had underestimated Tiffany's need for validation. If she couldn't control me, she was determined to destroy me. The notifications started rolling in around midnight. My phone buzzed across the nightstand like an angry hornet. I picked it up and saw that I had been tagged in dozens of posts. Tiffany had gone live on TikTok and Instagram. Gone was the polished high society hostess from the brunch. In the video, she was sitting on the floor of a hotel room, wearing an oversized t-shirt, no makeup, with messy hair. She looked broken. It was a flawless performance. He kicked me out. She sobbed into the camera, wiping away a tear that was perfectly timed for the algorithm. I tried to be a good wife. I tried to make our marriage work. And he cut off my cards. He left me with nothing. I'm scared, you guys. I don't know where I'm going to go. She conveniently left out the infidelity. She omitted the rules she tried to force me to sign. She didn't mention Brad or the Porsche or the thousands of dollars she had stolen from the business account. Instead, she painted a masterpiece of victimhood, where I was a tyrannical, abusive husband who used money to control her. The comments section was a bloodbath. Leave him, Queen. This is financial abuse. Let's find his business and ruin him. By Monday morning, the digital mob had mobilized. My architecture firm's Google page was flooded with one-star reviews from people who had never entered my building. Owner is a misogynist, one read. Supports financial abuse, read another. A potential client for a massive downtown redevelopment project emailed me to pause our contract negotiations until the personal matters were resolved. It was a low point. Sitting there in that gray apartment, watching strangers tear apart my reputation based on a lie, I felt a surge of nausea. The truth was on my side, legally speaking. But in the court of public opinion, evidence doesn't matter, only tears do. And Tiffany had plenty of those to sell. I wanted to record a response. I wanted to scream the truth. But my lawyer's advice echoed in my head. Do not engage. Let her dig her own grave. So I turned off my phone, stared at the ceiling, and prepared for the longest week of my life. The hardest thing I have ever done was doing absolutely nothing. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to log on to Instagram, post the photos of her and Brad, and expose her lies to the world. I wanted to fight fire with fire, but I knew that in a mud wrestling match with a pig, you both get dirty, but the pig likes it. Tiffany wanted a reaction. She needed me to look angry to fit her narrative of the abusive ex. So I gave her nothing but radio silence. I poured myself into my work. I showed up at the office early every single day, walking past the whispering staff and the ringing phones. I called my clients one by one, not to apologize, but to assure them that the firm was stable. I let my work speak for itself. When I wasn't working, I was in the gym, pushing weight until my muscles failed, or in therapy, unpacking a decade of manipulation. I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick, turning the pain into fuel. Meanwhile, I executed the next phase of the legal strategy, the financial disconnect. I didn't just freeze the accounts. I nuked them. The supplementary Amex Black card she carried, canceled. The joint checking account she used for her maintenance, frozen pending litigation. The luxury car lease, I called the dealership and arranged for a voluntary repossession if payments weren't made. And I certainly wasn't making them. It took exactly 3 days for the reality to hit her. I was in a meeting with my structural engineers when my phone lit up. It wasn't a social media notification this time. It was a fraud alert from the bank. Transaction declined. $3,200 at Saks Fifth Avenue. 10 minutes later, transaction declined. $150 at Nobu. Then came the text from Tiffany. The victim act dropped instantly. Why is my car not working? Jason, I'm at the register. This is embarrassing. Fix it. You can't do this. I need to eat. I didn't reply. I just swiped the notifications away and took a sip of my coffee. She was learning a harsh lesson in physics. Gravity is a lot stronger when you don't have a safety net. The smear campaign was her attempt to destroy my reputation, but she forgot that reputation doesn't pay the rent. I did, and the bank of Jason was permanently closed. While she was busy chasing likes and sympathy online, her real-world infrastructure was collapsing. She had the audience, sure, but you can't pay for a hotel room with TikTok views. The siege had begun, and I was prepared to wait her out. It turns out, romance is incredibly expensive, especially when your boyfriend is a personal trainer whose primary cardio consists of swiping credit cards he doesn't own. Without my funding, Tiffany's life didn't just downgrade, it plummeted. The first domino to fall was, predictably, Brad. He wasn't in love with Tiffany. He was in love with the lifestyle I provided. He loved the heated seats in the Porsche, the weekends at the vineyard, and the expensive dinners that I unwittingly paid for. Once the credit card started declining and Tiffany had to move into a budget motel near the airport, Brad's undying passion suddenly evaporated. I heard the news through a mutual acquaintance. Apparently, Brad had been spotted at a gym in Santa Monica, spotting a new client, a 60-year-old widow with a real estate empire. He didn't even break up with Tiffany to her face. He just ghosted her, blocked her number, unfollowed her on Instagram, and vanished like a foul odor in a strong breeze. Then came the squad. Those women who had laughed at me in my living room, who had cheered her on as she read her list of demands. They were nowhere to be found. Tiffany couldn't pick up the tab for brunch anymore. She couldn't host parties. She couldn't offer them anything but drama and requests for loans. And in Beverly Hills, if you aren't an asset, you're a liability. One by one, they stopped returning her texts. They stopped tagging her in posts. She was excised from the social circle with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. That's when the tone of her messages to me shifted again. The rage was gone. The entitlement was gone. What replaced it was a terrifying, desperate sweetness. One night, late, my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail. "Hey, Jace," she said, her voice trembling, sounding small and pitiful. I was just thinking about that trip we took to Cabo. Remember the sunset? Look, I know things got crazy. The lawyers are making this messy. But that list of rules? It was just a joke, babe. It was a prank for TikTok. It got out of hand. I miss you. I miss us. Can we just talk? Please. I listened to the message in the dark of my apartment. A month ago, that voice would have broken me. I would have rushed to save her. But now, I recognized it for what it was, a hoovering attempt. The narcissist trying to suck their victim back in because their new supply had run dry. She didn't miss me. She missed the security. She missed the status. She realized she had traded a castle for a tent, and she wanted the keys back. I didn't delete the voicemail. I saved it, not because I cared, but because I knew my lawyer would love to play for the judge. Mediation rooms are designed to be uninspiring. The walls are usually a neutral beige, the air conditioning is always set too low, and the coffee tastes like burnt rubber. It's a setting meant to bore you into a compromise. But as I sat across the mahogany table from Tiffany and her attorney, the atmosphere was anything but dull. It was electric with hostility. Tiffany had dressed the part of the grieving, abandoned housewife. She wore a modest black dress, minimal makeup, and kept a tissue clutched in her hand. Her lawyer, a shark named Mr. Vance who specialized in high-conflict divorces, didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Let's cut to the chase," Vance said, leaning back in his chair. Regardless of the infidelity clause, California is a community property state. My client supported Jason while he built his firm. She hosted dinners, networked, and maintained the household. We are seeking 50% of the company's equity, plus a lump sum payment for emotional distress caused by the abrupt eviction. Tiffany sniffled loudly for effect. "I just want what's fair, Jason. I gave you the best years of my life." I didn't say a word. I just looked at my lawyer, Robert, and gave a slight nod. Robert, A man who smiled as often as a gargoyle opened a thick binder he had brought with him. He didn't look at Vance. He looked directly at Tiffany. "We are prepared to discuss the equity split," Robert said smoothly. "But first, we need to address a discrepancy we found during the forensic accounting phase of discovery." Tiffany's sniffling stopped. Her eyes darted to the binder. "It seems," Robert continued, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table, "that over the last 18 months, there were a series of withdrawals from the joint savings account. Small amounts. $2,000 here, $3,000 there. All labeled as charitable donations or consulting fees to a registered LLC called Ironclad Fitness." Vance picked up the paper, frowning. "So?" "My client supports local businesses." "Ironclad Fitness," Robert interrupted, his voice dropping an octave, "is not a registered business. It's a shell entity. The bank account associated with it belongs to one Bradley Miller." Tiffany went rigid. "We traced over $75,000 of household funds that belonged to marital estate, funneled directly into your paramour's personal account," Robert said, leaning forward. "This isn't just spending money, Tiffany. This is embezzlement. This is fraud. And since these transfers were concealed as business expenses on our joint tax returns, you've also implicated yourself in tax evasion." Vance looked at the document, then at his client. The color drained from his face. He realized he wasn't arguing for a settlement anymore. He was looking at a potential criminal defense case. "Now," Robert said, closing the binder with a soft thud, "we can continue discussing your demand for half of Jason's company. Or we can discuss whether Jason files a police report for grand larceny. The choice is yours." Tiffany looked at me, her eyes wide with genuine terror. The game was over. She wasn't fighting for a payout anymore. She was fighting to stay out of handcuffs. The silence that followed Robert's ultimatum was deafening. You could actually hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Tiffany's lawyer, Mr. Vance, didn't yell or object. He simply closed his own file, took off his glasses, and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He was professional. He knew a checkmate when he saw one. "We need a recess," Vance muttered, grabbing Tiffany by the elbow and practically dragging her out of the conference room. They were gone for 20 minutes. When they returned, the atmosphere had completely changed. The shark was toothless, and the grieving widow act had been replaced by the trembling reality of a woman facing consequences for the first time in her life. Tiffany's eyes were red-rimmed, but this time it was real. Vance cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to accept the counteroffer. The terms were brutal, but fair. 0 alimony, 0 claim to my company, 0 claim to the house. She would keep her personal effects, her clothes, her jewelry, and her handbags, and I would agree not to file criminal charges for the misappropriated funds or the theft of the vehicle." It was a walkaway deal. She was leaving the marriage with exactly what she had brought into it. Nothing but her reflection in the mirror. I watched her as the settlement papers were placed in front of her. It was a poetic mirror image of that Sunday brunch. Then she had thrown a folder at me, demanding I sign away my dignity, while her friends laughed. Now, she was the one holding the pen, surrounded by lawyers, signing away her future to avoid a jail cell. Her hand shook violently as she scribbled her signature on the final page. Tiffany Walters. No longer Tiffany Sterling. She dropped the pen and looked up at me. There was no anger left in her eyes, only a hollow, haunting realization of what she had thrown away. She had a husband who adored her, a life of luxury and a secure future. And she had torched it all for a few months of excitement with a man who abandoned her the moment the credit card declined. She started, her voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted..." "I know." I cut her off gently. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need an apology, and I certainly didn't need closure from her. The ink on the paper was closure enough. "Goodbye, Tiffany." I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out of the room. I didn't look back. Walking down the courthouse steps into the bright afternoon sun, I took the first deep breath I had taken in years. The air didn't smell like smog. It smelled like freedom. The war was over, and against all odds, the nice guy had won. They say the best revenge is massive success. While that's true, I've found that the best revenge is actually something much quieter. Peace. It's been exactly 1 year since I walked out of that courthouse. My life looks very different now. My architecture firm didn't just survive the scandal, it thrived. Clients respected the way I handled the crisis, with dignity and silence. And we recently landed the contract for the new city library downtown. But the biggest changes aren't in my bank account. They're in my chest. That constant tightness, the feeling of walking on eggshells in my own home, it's gone. I sold a mansion in Beverly Hills. It was too big, too cold, and filled with too many ghosts. I bought a mid-century modern place closer to the coast. It's smaller, warmer, and filled with light. And I'm not alone. I met Elena 6 months ago. She's not a socialite. She's a pediatric nurse who drives a Honda and has never asked me to buy her a designer bag. Last week, we were making dinner together. Tacos, nothing fancy, and I dropped a jar of salsa. It shattered everywhere. I froze, instinctively waiting for the yelling, for the insults about how clumsy I was. Elena just laughed. "Well," she said, grabbing a towel, "now the floor will taste spicy. Help me clean this up handsome." In that moment, sweeping up glass without fear, I realized I had finally won. I drove past the old house the other day. I saw a moving truck in the driveway. A new family was moving in. I looked for anger, for sadness, for any lingering pain. But I felt nothing. Just a calm, quiet indifference. Tiffany is somewhere out there, probably still chasing the validation of strangers, still looking for a shortcut to happiness. I hope she finds it. But frankly, I don't think about her enough to care. That day she handed me the list of demands. She thought she was tightening the leash. Instead, she accidentally set me free. I learned that you can't negotiate your self-worth. If someone threatens to leave you because you won't submit to their disrespect, hold a door open for them. Thank you for listening to my story on Inspiration Seeker. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to walk away to find yourself, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Remember, your dignity is the one thing you can't afford to lose. Stay strong.